This is Bryson's car. He traded a dirt bike for it, drug it home on a trailer, and spent almost a year figuring out the parts and rebuilding the engine. He even got it running, well, kind of, and then he left. So Bryson isn't on the internet and he really has no idea what's going on here. I've spent the last 18 months going through as many nooks and crannies of this car as I can. I'm trying to be careful not to overstep my bounds because it is, after all, his car. But I'm pretty confident he'll have no complaints with what I've done so far. At this point, I'm rounding the corner on mechanical items, transitioning into bodywork with a focus on some of the more significant bumps and bruises and some general panel alignment. Well, dang it, I really thought I was done with the mechanical stuff on this car. Maybe that's a pipe dream. Maybe when you have a rotary, you're never done with the mechanical stuff. I've been toying with the bodywork, but admittedly putting it off until the temperatures come up a little bit. Until I get about 70 degrees outside, I'm really not in a position to paint. And so rather than having body panels strewn around the shop, I've left the car assembled so that I can drive it around in the meantime. Well, I've been driving it around, and it seems that I've developed a leak. Initially, I thought it was probably a fuel leak. On further observation, it appears to be a coolant leak. I can't tell where it's coming from for sure, but I have a sneaky suspicion that it's coming from the joint between the lower intake manifold and the engine block, which is really unsettling. I don't want to go in there. So I'm hoping it's something simpler than that. And before I tackle it, to be sure, I am going to put some dye into the coolant so that I can identify for sure where the coolant is coming from. I've been out for a drive and the dye has worked its way through the coolant. It is leaking, and although it's not leaking as much as it has in the past, I suspect that's probably just a function of how hot the coolant is. But it is definitely leaking, and it definitely shows the dye. The problem is that the car sits so low to the ground that I can't even get my head underneath to see what's going on. So I'm going to have to lift this up, get where I can see underneath it. From there, hopefully I can trace the source a little better. Well, I can't say I'm very excited about this, but it seems quite apparent that I have a leak between the keg and the lower intake manifold. I don't know how that would have developed. The car's got maybe 1,000 miles on it since it was rebuilt, and all of the gaskets and the seals and O-rings and things that go in there were installed new. So it seems a little perplexing that those would have gone out. Now, I know there are some ways to just delete those coolant passages and potentially eliminate this problem entirely. I don't think I'm going to do that, but we'll get it taken apart and see. The problem is, to do that, you got to pull off the intercooler, you got to pull off the upper intake manifold, you got to pull off the exhaust, then the turbo, and then I think the lower intake manifold can come off from there. At which point, you lose some coolant. Maybe all of it. I don't know. Maybe I should be draining that in advance. I guess we'll find out when we get there. This job's a little bit irritating, in part because I'm quite confident Bryson put brand new seals on when he put this together. And so I don't understand really what's going on. Okay. There's a little bit of coolant built up right here too. Not my idea of a good time. Well, sure enough, the problem's pretty clear. I don't know how that happened. Is that from improper installation, or is it maybe from overheating the O-ring? I'm a bit perplexed. So the good news is that we definitely found the problem in this failed O-ring. The bad news is that I don't know why it failed in the first place. But we'll clean things up, replace the gasket, replace the O-rings, put it back together, and hope for the best. Now, just to put this in perspective, the 45 seconds of video time equates to about 4 or 5 hours of project. Oh my gosh. That is insanity. Well, in spite of how much I did not want to do that project, I'm thrilled to have it done. And everything's looking good. After burning off the coolant that spilled onto the exhaust and the turbo, the steam has dissipated and everything seems to have sealed up nicely. And with that done, my mind is once again put to rest on the mechanicals, well, until the next thing happens, and I can turn my attention back to the bodywork.